But now if I have to consider how much money I want to spend on a personal camera, one that I can do personal projects and earn money with, I would not spend more than $5,000. First, the market is changing much too fast. And secondly, the cameras are really good at that price range. So I think we can agree that this is like anything from 5,000 downward is a very attractive market for manufacturers, and maybe that's why Blackmagic Design is also bringing down the prices.
This is Focus Check, the weekly CineTech podcast.
Welcome to episode 80 of CineD Focus Check. My name is Nino.
I'm Johnny.
And welcome to our new studio. It only took us 1.5 years to upgrade.
Well, now that we saw that we're serious about this and there is consistency, we decided to fulfill an old dream that we had and finally record ourselves in an anamorphic way. One of the reasons I like it, because I look taller before the D-squeeze.
But if you just your camera can just be not D-squeeze.
Exactly.
You can do that.
Yeah, can you please not D-squeeze me so I look taller?
But I think we might be the only anamorphic podcast out there. I don't know. I'm not aware of any other podcast that shoots anamorphic. I mean, if you're listening to this, we will not sound anamorphic, I think. But
should aim for that.
If you watch the video version, you will see it's super wide. Yeah.
It's great. It's fun. I mean, it's like, what is life without trying and spitting blood?
How do you like my vintage camera collection behind us?
That's really great. I should put mine here.
Yeah, bring them.
If I didn't sell them by then. But
bring them. There's a lot of very good gems there behind us. And
absolutely, yeah.
So, yeah, thanks a lot to everybody who supported this transition. First and foremost, Felix behind the scenes, our podcast producer. He did an amazing job together with Florian, our gear guru at the studio. And yeah, they did a great job setting this up together with us. And I think it's nice. And also, thank you very much to NANLITE. In some of the future episodes, we're going to feature how the NANLITE lighting setup looks here and which lights we used for what. And we're going to, just show you around the studio a little bit. This will come next week. We will need to prepare.
Amazing. Yeah, they have these small lights, really great, almost tailored to what we did.
The RGB tubes. That's right. The Pebble Slim. Yeah, they're back there. Yeah, it's beautiful. We like it. I mean, there will be still, some tweaks and changes over time, of course. We're not happy with everything. We never will be. But I think it's a good starting point.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move into content. So actually this week is just, a little bit over 1 week over before IBC starts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's fair to say it's going to be an exciting IBC.
It's fair to say that we are literally out of our rabbit hole to do the podcast and then back into planning IBC. It's going to be one of the busiest shows ever for us. And actually some of the more exciting announcements that everybody want to hear about will be prior to IBC, so people can literally go and see what the companies are offering. We are up to here with work. Our hands are really full of work and we are so excited. And I'm sure you guys will be excited too. And yeah, of course, we want to talk what happened this week or last week, but our head is already aiming for next week.
I think we're not spoiling anything by saying that there's already some teasers out there. There are going to be new cameras ahead of IBC. And when I say ahead of IBC, it means that we really able to talk about in next week's podcast, which is literally released the day before IBC starts. So next Thursday, I think that's the 10th of September. You'll have a very exciting podcast for the new camera. So,
I mean, the only one that actually already released a slide, let's say a teaser slide, is Canon, basically. Yeah. And Canon, they coming soon on the 9th of September. So coming soon.
So the stuff we'll talk about this week is, of course, related to the last 2 weeks. And I think some of the things you see are a bit signs of things to come or change. I don't know. But ahead of those trade shows, we usually see some shifts in pricing, some firmware updates to existing cameras.
Trends
in general, where we feel like you can feel where things are going. Now, two of the things we want to highlight here is that Blackmagic has dropped the prices of their URSA Cine camera kits. Now, if you remember back in January, we had a whole podcast, I think, where we talked about this price drop of the URSA Cine 12K LF, which was dropped to $7,000 as kind of a camera-only camera. And at that time, we were a bit confused because doing the math, we realized that if you buy the accessories separately, you're much cheaper than buying the kits, which didn't drop in price as much. And now finally, I have no idea why it took the half a year or more than half a year. They also dropped the prices of those kits. So now you basically get a Blackmagic URSA Cine 12K LF kit instead of $15,000 for $10,000 or $9,500. And also the 17K has dropped from 30,000 to 23,000, basically the kit. Yeah. And the kit contains the 8 terabyte media module and a lot of other stuff, of course, base plates and all that kind of stuff. So it's more in line with the actual body price now than it used to be. Now, of course, Blackmagic says that this is because they were able to kind of streamline production and make things cheaper. It's always, of course, that might be part of the truth, but I don't know what your feeling is, but I always feel like it's a sign of maybe it's not selling as well as they hoped it would.
I don't speculate here, and we have a lot of respect to what they do and what they are going to do. I think in general, those type of cameras, like a bigger body camera, kind of shaping themselves to be either a rental item or something that you invest in if you know that you are very busy DP. The thing is that the smaller compact cinema cameras, like the Sony FX3, they're selling like hotcakes and they are so well spread. And I think both of us agree that everybody want to do something along the line of the FX3. And we talked before when we talked about ARRI and such, that you really need this kind of pyramid, that you need a very solid bottom in order to grow the business. And if you have, like the FX3, for example, a solid bottom to sell compact cinema cameras at a reasonable price, then you can sell the higher end. But maybe part of the reduction here is really because the trend is shifting into more compact cameras. Those are cheaper, they're very capable, they're easy to maneuver, and so on. So I think both of us agree that we would love to see many more companies heading that way and producing cameras that we would be very happy to have and use if those are small, compact, not so expensive, very capable and such.
Yeah, I think we know that the high end market, when we talk about the very expensive cameras and cinema cameras is very small. We're talking about a couple of thousand units globally that are being sold in this bracket, of course. And low end is kind of not there anymore because even what was considered low end cameras are not low end anymore, right? I mean,
in terms of quality.
Exactly. So now, like the low end is maybe one or two models that each manufacturer still has in APS-C size for those mirrorless cameras. And then you already move into mirrorless, then you have all of them have like one more affordable mirrorless full frame model. And then right above that is usually the most popular line right now.
How much money, do you remember how much money you spent on the Canon, what was C300? I think it was around 15,000.
Yeah, it was 15,000.
15,000. Now, do you see yourself now spending that amount of money? No.
Well, we talked about it. We said a few years ago, we already said it doesn't make sense to buy cameras over 10,000.
Exactly.
And now this is moving even down.
Exactly. I mean, I spent on my Canon 1DC $10,000. I'm not regretting it. For that time, it was good. It covered itself. It made even some money. But now, if I have to consider how much money I want to spend on a personal camera, one that I can do personal projects and earn money with, I would not spend more than $5,000. First, the market is changing much too fast. And secondly, the cameras are really good at that price range. So I think we can agree that this is like anything from 5,000 downward is a very attractive market for manufacturers. And maybe that's why Blackmagic Design is also bringing down the prices. So it's more affordable.
The interesting thing, traditionally, camera manufacturers would introduce the more, I would say, broadcast type / higher end cameras during a show like IBC and NEB, because those are the two big broadcast shows. Traditionally, they did. I mean, the FS7 and so on was introduced during IBC. But we'll see next week if this is going to change. And I think I agree with you. I think it's going to change because now we see those smaller cameras moving into broadcast. I mean, we saw Sony FX3s being used during the Olympics and like a lot of stuff where we wouldn't have seen that a few years ago. I think a good sign and a good indication to how popular the FX3 is also the firmware updates that were pushed from Sony just over a week ago. And I'm just taking an indication how popular this camera is by looking at the amount of comments we get on the site, but also on social media. When we just post about a fairly, well, it's a big firmware update, but it's not huge in the sense that it doesn't, it's not rocket science, but it's a firmware update to a camera that has been in the market for 5-6 years. So it's by no means a new camera. Of course, you have the FX3, FX3A, which is essentially replacing the FX3, and then the FX30. But, they all got a firmware update, adding the big 6 home screen.
Which is great. It's giving you a feeling of a little Venice.
Yeah, it's this little, it's a home screen that shows you 6 of the most significant, most important things.
So this is what you need to change. This is right, and it's very useful.
You need to change about the camera, and it's very useful. I mean, they took a page out of Ari's playbook, of course, here, because it is literally what Alexa has looked like for ages. And they first introduced this, I think, with the FX6, and then it was introduced with other cameras too, and now also with the FX3 line, FX30.
So me personally, I really like that they added more discrete options, 1.5 and 1.6, because I think that's one of the things we were always kind of complaining about. Why we had 1, 3, and 2, and then there was nothing in the middle. But maybe the most significant next to the big 6 is the ability to output through HDMI raw material.
Yeah, just I want to about the D-squeeze. I mean, I don't understand why we always had to beg them for this. I mean, this literally, I was always hoping they would just introduce all the relevant D-squeeze options at once. And now with we get like homeopathic doses of those. But now I think it's kind of complete. I think you had the...
Still missing, it all depends. Like if you consider 1.8 as a rigid...
Well, the question is how you don't have open gate shooting in these cameras. So the question is how useful is it? Because that's the biggest downside, of course, is now that you still are limited to the 17:9 aspect ratio of the sensor, 69 or 17. And that means it's kind of limited.
Yeah. But let's see. That brings new life to the camera, because so many people had it. Then it, of course, would be nice.
You mentioned the raw video output.
Yeah, but raw video output to a Blackmagic design monitor recorder.
Blackmagic raw.
Yeah, sure. Just to make sure, I'm not 100% sure that the Blackmagic actually updated, like send already a firmware update on their end, because you will need also to update the monitor in order to receive the signal and be able to.
They probably did.
So this is just something to check. One nice thing is that so far we didn't really hear from people that were updating, but no cameras were affected on a negative way, because I think previously in the last year or so, 1 or 2 firmwares from Sony,
they pulled it.
Exactly, didn't go that well, and some people were like, I'm not updating until I hear from other people. So I think that went well. And one other feature that we could have found in the FX2, this is this when you use an anti-filter on the front of the lens, you can actually register the amount of ND strength that you're using, and that will go as a metadata.
Because you have to set it manually.
Yeah. But still, it's nice builds into the metadata. So small things like this, but all in all.
Well, one thing is cool if you use their Creators Cloud thing. You can now define when you use their flags, like the OK, not good, and keep flags. You can define which one of those takes gets uploaded in the background. So that's quite useful.
Yeah, and honestly, those type of okay, negative, keep, whatever, existing in different forms since the day, I don't know what. I never used it. When you're on set, if
you're alone, you don't use it. But if you have because they're, what is it called? The camera monitor and control app.
Yeah.
You can use this if you have somebody like a producer with you or director who wants to do that. They can already do that on the monitor control app while you're shooting, and that's useful, I think. So, but yeah, it's also something I personally haven't used, but I think it's nice to have, and I'm sure some people use it. But I just want to, the raw output to Blackmagic RAW is significant. I mean, now that means like you're not limited to ProArt RAW external recording anymore. You can also go straight to Blackmagic RAW, which of course is relevant if you're in the Resolve ecosystem, because Resolve is still it's really the only software now that doesn't support ProArt RAW. You can use ProArt RAW in Premiere. You can use it, of course, in Final Cut Pro, but you could not do that in Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve. So
the elephant in the room is, and I'll ask it loud and clear, where is the internal RAW in the Sony cameras? Why don't we have it? I mean, it's 2025. Companies are moving forward with different stuff. Yeah. And it's nice, but they allow us external RAW. Both of us would love to see RAW internally.
It's also becoming the standard of it. If you look at the other manufacturers, it's kind of like all of them have it now. It's only Sony that doesn't have it. And the thing is, I mean, they probably want to protect, their XOCN, whatever, RAW to their high-end Venice and Burano and so on. And now they have this light codec in the Burano. But you have ProArt RAW now. You have more and more. We're starting to see ProArt RAW internal recording in mirrorless cameras, which
is it's already exists for quite some time.
Yeah, but it's kind of moving into, I mean, we see that there's an openness from probably Apple, who owns that license, because we don't see this from Blackmagic RAW. There's no camera that can do that in Blackmagic RAW, as far as I'm aware, except for, of course, Blackmagic cameras.
I think it's a technical thing. I think it's a hardware limitation for now.
Oh, I don't think so. But I mean, Apple seems to be open to support that if manufacturers want to do it. And that, I mean, they could do that. They could just, take that ProArt RAW as an invitation and add that to their cameras, but they haven't so far. And it's that, and of course, the lack of, open gate or whatever larger sensor usage in a way.
I think we can agree, if you don't do this, somebody else will do.
That's what somebody else is already doing it. And it's just frustrating in a way that, because you see it's just a firmware update and gets so much attention because of the amazingly huge user base of the FX3. There's so many people who have this camera. And we saw it with, even when I went to the London event for the Sony extension system Mini, and this really got millions of views. And you're like, why? I mean, it's a 25,000 euro accessory for a camera that probably a few hundred people have. People saw that image and they were like, is there a small Sony camera? No. I mean, yes and no, but not really something that's accessible. Please, Sony, give us new cameras that do more. We want it. A lot of people want it. Anyway, let's move on. So next week is going to be exciting. In terms of other new cameras, there's only one thing that we can mention. That is already kind of like almost 2 weeks ago, but Insta360 announced the Go Ultra, a tiny 4K pocket camera that got some serious upgrades. Now, if you remember the original Go and the Go 2 and the Go 3, the kind of predecessors, they were a little bit smaller even than that. When I first saw this, I thought, oh no, they're moving into normal kind of GoPro size, but not really. I mean, it's really tiny still. If you look at their Pro video, I can just start it here. You will see how small it is. I think it's only 53 grams. So it's kind of the size of a cookie and also the weight of a cookie. And it's tiny. I mean, you can put it anywhere. And I think it's great to have a camera like that. We see this whole trend now that finally action cams are going back to being small. When I say going back to being small, I mean, remember the DJI Action 2, I think? There was one generation of DJI Osmo Action 2, which was small, and then they went back to the GoPro size. And now we see these things becoming more popular again. I think there's a real market for this. Of course, it's much more flexible than having a larger action cam. And it's very easy to put on different angles, of course. So I think if this works well, if it doesn't overheat, this is something that a lot of people will use. 70 minutes in 1080p is a good, good performance. And they have this little accessory which kind of makes it a fully sized action cam, which is nice. So basically you plug it into this whole contraption, and then you get a screen, and you can flip up the screen, and it's like tiltable screen. You can film yourself, and you can take it out and just use it like that and monitor through the app. It's quite useful. It's a smart idea. It's not totally inexpensive. It's 450
Really, it is.
Yeah, but I think the pro view, they're doing a good job. If that footage is really from that camera, I'm impressed. We haven't tested it. A lot of other people have. There's a lot of shots online. It's 10 meters water resistant, so you can dive with it. So I think it's nice that things are moving in this space. And we really see that Insta360, not only through their drone company, Anti-Gravity, but also through the other products, are now in a position to really give DJI a bit of competition, where they were kind of alone in a lot of spaces. Not alone, but GoPro seems to be in trouble and hasn't really released hardware upgrades in a long time. And DJI, as we know through our Action 4, Action 5 review, has really overtaken GoPro in image quality. So it's nice to see Insta360 coming out with new stuff that is, taking new form factors and so on. So let's see how the reaction will be from DJI to that. But I'm excited to see that, we have really small action cameras again. Okay, let's move on also to another piece of drone news. Now, there was a company called HOVERAir released a waterproof self-flying drone called AQUA. And this is very specific use case, of course. It also a Chinese company. It is only a one-axis gimbal. So that's already one thing to consider. It's almost like an FPV drone in that sense. But the cool thing is it can literally take off and land over water. And it's a very specific use case, of course. But if you need to do that, it's quite useful. Of course, like we know that flying close to water can be troublesome. Your drone gets hit by some droplets if you're filming surfers and so on, and it will immediately crash.
So this is not an underwater drone.
No, it's not an underwater drone.
Proper drone, just it can sustain water.
Exactly.
Right.
It can literally take off and land in water, and it's floating. Like it has a floating kind of, and
I like the color.
Yeah, but it's a cool thing. It's definitely a niche thing. But if you're somebody who shoots a lot of water stuff, like surfers, I think Felix, you did a lot of Red Bull surfer stuff, right, in Portugal. So
is this something that you would you can give this or that? Is that something that you will consider, or you'll go for the?
You can go closer to the surface.
Yeah, you just go closer to the surface. And the funny thing is, they're really kind of mimicking in a way DJI. Even with the packages, they have a fly more combo, which is exactly what DJI calls it.
Fly more wet?
Well, it's with more batteries, I guess I could say. And but it's and also the kind of orbiting functions and all that you have built in. So the whole thing is, the point is you use that I think it's more of a prosumer thing. So if you're doing sports on the water, you can't control a controller, right? So that it's meant to follow you around. Like you do surfing, kayaking, paddleboarding, whatever. You can just have it follow you, which is nice, of course.
Maybe something to try once, no?
Yeah, it's not as a prosumer product. It's not exactly affordable. I think it's $1,000 for the standard combo, and then $1,200 for the fly more
for my next vacation.
No, but it's a starting point, I guess, and but I guess it's niche enough that for something that maybe DJI doesn't want to conquer as well. We'll see. All right, let's move on to a new Nikon lens. So Nikon introduced a second generation of their 2470 f2.8. Now, of course, that being the standard zoom lens that's a NIKKOR Z, by the way, which means full frame. Standard zoom lenses are important because, of course, they're kind of, used a lot on the standard cameras. Now, the cool thing about this lens is that it's internal zooming. So I think they say it's the first 2470 that has an internal mechanism. So it's not actually, like changing its shape when you're reviewing, which is nice. Also, if you're on a gimbal or something like that, the weight distribution doesn't change significantly. It's lighter than the predecessor, I think 16%, which is always great.
Yeah, we actually had it in the hand, and it's just so light, and it looks good, looks nice. I think it's also, for me, like the focal length on the 24-30 is fine, and f2.8, it can be the next running gun zoom lens if you have a Nikon camera. I think just to see the quality, of course, the image quality, which I don't suspect with Nikon will release something which is so, but it's just a very nice lens.
Autofocus supposedly 5 times faster than the previous function, whatever that means, but the previous version. So, but if that's true, that's significant, of course. And actually what I just said about the gimbal, it says the center of gravity shift is reduced by 30%, which of course is great for gimbal work.
We also have from Nikon that it's a power-focal lens, but this is something to
because it's always like par-focal, right?
Of course, it's a I guess fly-by-wire lens, but that's just to check.
Yeah, because usually with these lenses these days, even when you switch off autofocus, you essentially have a motor kind of compensating, and then kind of gives you the impression of parfocality, where in reality, of course, it's a motor kind of mimicking that. But it doesn't matter. I mean, if it works, it works, and it does its job. And then you can focus in one focal length and just change the field of view and still be in focus.
Anyway, it's not a cheap lens. It's almost $2,800 or 2,500 euros. But if you are if you have a Nikon camera and you use it a lot and you need a running gun capable, good focal length, lightweight lens, and you do photos and videos, that might be something to consider.
Also on the red cameras with the Z mount now, of course. So, yeah, of course, which good. Now let's stick with lenses a little bit. Now Tilta announced the development of a so-called face detection autofocus adapter, which is made for the Nucleus-M2 wireless control system. Now, first of all, I want to highlight that we are about to finish a review of the Nucleus-M2 together with the camera assistant Marcel Clean, who's used it on a lot of feature films over the last few months, actually. And I recorded a review interview with him, which will go up soon. Maybe it's already live when you see this. And very detailed about the performance of the Nucleus-M2. Now, in the review, we speculated what, some pins on the Nucleus-M2 were for. And Tilta was a bit vague about what it is. And now they just announced that they are working on a face detection autofocus adapter. Now, this adapter, I think now, they weren't specific yet if it's E-mount to E-mount or RF to RF. At least it's for E-mount and RF, but I don't know what from, to be honest. And the whole idea is that you use manual lenses, and they released a bit of it's kind of a VFX video kind of highlighting.
Makes manual lenses autofocus rated.
Basically, yeah, but not only that, it doesn't use LiDAR. It uses the autofocus function of the camera somehow. So it taps into the camera and connects to the camera's autofocus function somehow. So
is it clear already what we need to have in order to make it work? Because of course, theoretically, it sounds like a great thing.
Well, you need the Nucleus-M2 motor, of course, and I guess all the processing will happen in the hand unit. I don't know. No, it's not really clear yet.
Okay, so you will have to purchase the own adapter and the Nucleus.
Yeah, and I guess there will be a package too. But
okay.
The Nucleus-M2 is extremely affordable.
We will find out more during the IBC for sure.
Yes.
And we'll ring the later.
If that works, it's a big deal, I think. I'm surprised it doesn't have to rely on LiDAR. It doesn't seem to have to.
Well, if it's relying on the camera's autofocus itself, obviously the adapter has some electronic connectors and that talks to the camera already. And then why do you need another? Why do you need to add when most of the cameras today are doing good autofocus?
Well, it's interesting, but I guess it needs to be reverse engineered because I can't see, the camera manufacturers be open to share that. But we don't know.
I don't know. Camera manufacturers are very open with some of the Chinese companies. We know that they have good contacts with SmallRig, for example, and they do share protocols beforehand whenever it's needed. I don't see why they don't do it. Why wouldn't they do this with Tilta also? No, those are reputable companies, and yeah.
But let's see. It's a very exciting technology if it works, and of course,
So all my anamorphic lenses will be autofocus one day, like they're manual.
Imagine, and you don't have to think about it anymore to have autofocus built into the lens.
For me, because I worked in one of the reviews with, what's the name? PD, the other company that make those manual...
PD movie?
That's right. And the main issue for me was, it's good when you work on like, let's say up to 2-3 meters. Infinity, of course.
But that's a LiDAR system.
Yeah, I know. But But the problem was always if somebody moves from the center to the side, then the whole system gets confused.
It's better with a DJI LiDAR, but it's still the same.
Yeah. But that's the thing that you have to think about how you compose your image. So I'm really wondering here if you are able actually to move your cruiser to the place you want, and because you depend on the camera, it should work, no?
If it works through the camera AF system, it shouldn't be a problem. But let's see.
That would be the main advantage for me to work with something like this.
All right, let's move on to a content piece, a bit of a long read that I wrote about the Netflix algorithm and how that is reshaping filmmaking. Now, I based this off a very nice long article in The Guardian, which I really recommend you to read if you're interested in that kind of stuff. But it's diving into how the Netflix algorithm has actually changed films on Netflix, but beyond that over the last, 15 years. They're really doing a deep dive in all the data that they get from users. They, of course, know exactly how long you linger on a watch page, how long it takes you to actually start a movie, where you stop watching it, how much attention there is in terms of interaction and so on. And it's really, really interesting because they're diving deep into very specific productions and that they made, which were only or predominantly based on algorithm data that they got. So, for example, there was a movie called The Electric State, which was released in March this year, which briefly hit number 1 on the Netflix chart and then vanished from the top 20 of Netflix, which probably is a hint that it's not that great of a film. And it cost a reported $320 million to produce. And this was based entirely on user data. So they looked at what people were watching and what kind of stuff they liked and kind of mushed it all together and made movies of that. And they have this with big names. I mean, we've seen this with, films like Red Notice and many others where they attach really, really big names to that and spend a lot of money on talent.
So based on their statistics, they created a movie that became a flop. That's what you're saying.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is, it works for some things, of course. I mean, if it's mass-produced stuff, that's not really, there's like a whole list of things that filmmakers, and this is why I wanted to really highlight that, have to abide to when they produce a movie for Netflix. For example, there needs to be a hook within the first 5 seconds or whatever, so people don't switch off. There's also the whole thing that a lot of people, and that's not true for everything, of course, but we talk about the mass content that gets a big audience, and they need to produce content that hooks people even though they're on their phone next to watching Netflix. It's a bit sad, but it's also a sign of the times in a way. And, the funny thing is they did that a lot in I think in between 2016 and 21 with a lot of Netflix originals that were based on all that data. And then they realized these experiments, some of them really failed, and they they shifted their strategy, and then they started emphasizing fewer projects and actually spend more money on individual productions to hopefully be more successful there. And some of them worked really, really well. But I was interested in that from a filmmaker's perspective because it simply means that there are some practical takeaways for filmmakers when it comes to audience attention. And that is, of course, not only for cinematographers like you and me, but also directors and screenwriters. And it's basically structure matters. So, it's always important to have openings that grab attention quickly because most of us don't produce for the cinema where you have the people already in the seat. They can't escape in a way unless they need to run for the bathroom, which they usually don't do. So then also think small screen first. A lot of people, a lot more than you would think, are actually consuming content on small screens. And when I say small screen, I don't only mean phones, but it's tablets, laptop screens, and so on. You wouldn't believe how many people generation that consume. Yeah, a lot of people don't watch Netflix on TVs, even though now it's over 50%, I think. But there's still a lot of people who don't do that. Package for green lights, which means, projects with talents who already have strong track records are much easier to get greenlit. Of course, that's not something, which is practical for small indie producers, but it's still something to keep in mind. If you have a well-known person attached to something, even if it's behind the scenes, it helps. protect the indie route, and for independent projects, a theatrical or festival first strategy can kind of validate the risk and give a bit of leverage when you're negotiating with streamers. And that is, of course, for the things that are not commissioned by streamers. Like if you want to make a movie that hopefully gets picked up by a streamer, it helps if you have a bit of a track record before that through their festivals and so on, obviously. And then, experimentation is good. I mean, you can experiment with a unique language, cinema language. It makes a difference because they learn through their failed experiments that, just following all the rules by what worked in the past for big blockbuster movies is still not a guarantee for the future, which gives me hope. Like even though they have all this algorithmic data and they think that they can kind of automatically generate the next hit, especially now with AI tools and so on, it's not true. I mean, it's simply not working every time. And they also, bet a lot of money on the wrong horses. So it actually gives me hope for, creative productions, smaller productions that stick out and are innovative. But I think there's a few good examples. If you kind of build on what worked before, because artists do the same thing, right? You are influenced by everything you watch. You make something new, and a lot of it is based on what you've seen before. And there's some very successful examples on Netflix as well, like Stranger Things, for example. The whole visual language is like Steven Spielberg from the 80s and particularly 70s, 80s. And that was a phenomenally successful series. And, there's this saying, like bad artists, bad artists imitate, great artists steal. So the true, right? In a way, it's not just AI imitating reality. It's also artists, but doing it in a smarter way and just, coming up with new stuff. But it's never a guarantee. That's what gives me hope, right? There's no guarantee to have a success, whether you plan it as much as they do based on all the data in the world, or you just do something that feels right for you as an artist because you are convinced that it works. Either way can be successful or not successful, but I think it gives a bit of hope for artists to just be creative and continue that path. But I really recommend reading that. There's a lot of very insightful data in that Guardian article as well, when it comes to very successful and very unsuccessful shows from Netflix and how the whole content strategy has shifted. Now, there are, of course, a few comments that say, well, Netflix is not everything. Yes, I agree. But Netflix by far, with a huge, distance to the runner-up, Prime Video is the most successful streaming company in the world. If you don't count in YouTube, of course, but I'm talking about paid streaming. And I think everybody else is running after what they're doing. So, there's a lot to learn for producers and filmmakers here. Good. Now, with this little excursion, let's move back to a little bit of gear, shall we? Shall we? SmallRig released a small handheld power stick, essentially a battery grip. We've seen this many, many times before, no?
We've seen with others, and of course, we have a different shape of the same thing, like the V-mount, gold mount, especially V-mount right now. But I like the shape. I like the shape and I like the strength. This is a 27,200 milliampere battery capacity. It has one USB-C up to 100 watt. That means you can really connect your laptop to this if you want. And the other one would be 65 watts, DTAP input, output, and so on. And it's it's relatively lightweight. It's 632 grams. I can say that in the latest camera review that I did, I needed to use an external something, and this something needed power. So I used a V-mount battery, literally, I connected the USB-C to a V-mount battery, and then I put it in a small bag. And surprisingly, it was very convenient to work with. It didn't really drop me, but if I would have had something in that shape, I really wonder if that would have been even easier. But that seems to be very versatile, big enough, also safe to travel with in the aeroplane. It's 99 watt hours. So that's right. And very easy to attach, because one of the things that the V-mount batteries usually lack is actually mounting points. You don't really mount them, you click them. And here you have the normal attachment point that we need in order to attach it either to a SmallRig, grip, reporting. Exactly. That's the main thing. And the price of this thing is $150.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I don't remember the brands. I think we have a whole drawer of those from the past 15 years, which were the same kind of. What's new also is that you have 100 watts output now.
Exactly. That's double boost to, especially when you travel a lot and you fly. And we don't always fly in business class when you have the outlet. So you can really work and give at least 1 cycle of full battery to your laptop and extend the time that you can edit the next preview, for example.
Yeah. Let's move on to new monitor that we are actually going to review. But this is the ASUS ProArt Display 6K PA32QCV monitor. So it's a 6K version of that 32-inch monitor that we reviewed already, the few 4K version.
That's right. So first of all, it seems like ASUS is extremely busy and spitting out monitors one after another. I have to say that we are working with different ASUS monitors right now just to get the feel and also because there are so many of those and they look good. Just to formulate one gear guide that also will help you guys to like direct you which monitor might be useful for you. And for example, I'm working now, I don't have it right here, but this is like a portable 16-inch, really great. One USB-C, you simply connect it and you work with this. I'm doing the editing, the grading of the second monitor. It can go everywhere. It will be revised at IBC, very easy to use. But this specific one is really for accurate coloring. It's as you said, 6K, 100% sRGB, and then
60 hertz only. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not for gaming, basically. It's really for editing. 600 nits and in HDR mode.
On the board built in, that's nice.
Yeah. There are 4 of those, if I'm not mistaken.
No, two Thunderbolt 4 ports.
Yeah. And the Delta is less than 2. We will. I don't want to dive into the actual specifications because we're gonna review this and then simply come up and see if whatever the company claims here, has a basis to make it a very good tool for editing. But all in all, I really like the ProArt series. The design is very nice. It's all very sleek and easy to use. Price-wise, this is a $1,400 monitor. Of course, you can get it in B&H or in some vendors in Europe. We will report much more about it after we finish the.
And after diving with this really first, it was at least one of the first monitor reviews that we published. We are working on establishing a bit more streamlined way of reviewing those. I mean, not with this one maybe actually, but in the future we're thinking about, we know we're not claiming to be absolute experts in this, but we're trying our best to, be as comprehensive as possible because those are not monitors that are in the price bracket of super high-end grading monitors, which are a lot more expensive. But we are seeing that the technology becomes more accessible. And we will take more care of actually looking closely
at finding the way that we're doing those videos that would be consistent. And at the end, everybody will benefit because we will have the knowledge and we know what can serve us best for editing. For now, me personally, I really like this little 16-inch. It's literally freeing up my space here on the laptop, and it's so easy to maneuver. That's amazing.
Well, the 32-inch that I use frees up more. I can tell you that. Okay. Tilta has just announced full camera cages for the Sony FX2. Now, of course, logical next step now that the FX2 is out and about. There's a couple different FX2 cages out there now from Tilta in different versions. You can get this side grip from them, and rolls all kinds of different things. I think it's like, how many different, 4 different variations of that. There's the base cage, there's one with the XLR extension bracket kit, the top handle, and then also the base plate and the side handle pro kit.
I'm actually very interested because personally I stopped completely working with cages.
Yeah, me too.
And I usually rely, many of those, the FX2, FX3 and so on, they do have attachment holes built in, which many times are really sufficient. I'm very interested to know about you guys, if you're still working with cages, and if yes, what are you trying to do with this? Like build it to the point where the camera looks bigger and more professional, or really to help you with attaching stuff? Like if you choose it the way.
But you need it if you use a focus monitor, of course. Focus motor. So that's, but yeah, I mean, the FX2 and all the other cameras in the FX line already have some mounting points to put a monitor. So that's not what it's needed for. I mean, what's always missing for me in those cameras is an HDMI protector. It's so easy to rip out this HDMI cable line. It is better since you have a full-size HDMI on most cameras, but it's still a bit of a hassle. But yeah, I mean, for me, if I use it only when I need rods, to be honest, like if I need rods for something, that's the only way.
Yeah, it is. Maybe that's something we need to talk to camera manufacturers about, to include at least the path to put a rod inside.
I'm really surprised that there's not, I mean, there are a few manufacturers that kind of make their own kind of cages, like Blackmagic, like baseplate and so on. But a bit more modular system that comes directly from the manufacturer.
Yeah, but with Tilta and SmallRig dominating this market, I don't think that a manufacturer will literally go and invest so much money into this.
Okay, iodyne. We covered their workflow kitchen during NAB. So what is that?
Well, the main idea is to allow, iPhones are very capable tools, filming tools, and they're up to 4K, let's say 60 for normal recording. So iodyne is trying to take the pro data and make it like a hub that you can literally connect up to 4 iPhones and have a proper workflow that all of those are connected into the iodyne pro data and be able to record simultaneously. There's a lot of information in this work for kitchen video that we just published here together with iodyne. I think you should look at this if you're interested in working with iPhone on multi-camera production, basically. That's a bit of a sign of the future in one way, because obviously many people are interested in like, what should I do now with the iPhone beyond me being able to film the family?
I mean, it's one of the things that's annoying if you are using iPhones. Of course, you kind of have to rely on the internal storage because you can use via USB-C, of course, an SSD, but then you will have 4 SSDs if you have 4 iPhones. So this is basically recording everything at the same time onto one of the Pro Data units. So you have already everything there to start editing. And we did record, if you remember, one podcast episode like that with my Sony and NAB, like our NAB episode. I don't remember what the episode number was. Maybe you can link it in the bio, in the description of the podcast, I mean. But so we did use their system for our NAB episode. And it makes sense, of course, if you want to have that set up and just to make your life a little bit easier.
Yeah, and the product itself starts at 12 terabytes. So obviously, you should worry about the capacity whatsoever.
Good. So that video and article is now at CineD as well. Check it out if you want to know how they did the multi-tethering with iPhone and to their Pro Data workflow, and then to the DIT editor and so on. Good. Let's move on to our poll of the week, which is about anamorphic lenses.
Yeah, we talk a lot about spherical and anamorphic lenses, and I think we never really asked the basic question. And the basic question is, have you guys ever used them, anamorphic lenses? And we were really curious to know from different reasons. First of all, because so many companies are now allocating resources to create those anamorphic lenses in different price brackets. Some of them are autofocus, some of them are not. And we also wanted to know for ourselves if we should continue and actually review anamorphic lenses maybe in a faster pace and so on, especially now that companies like Blazer and Siri are really, really mastering the technology of the lower end and with very good quality. So first of all, 430 people took the time to answer. And I'm very happy personally because I think both of us will have anamorphic, the anamorphic look, but I really...
As you can see in this podcast now.
Exactly. So it's nice to see that 42%, let's talk percentage, 32 under 30% of people filmed with anamorphic lenses and they love it. 29% never actually filmed with anamorphic, but they want to. That's a bit surprising for me. And
maybe they have Sony cameras and don't have the D-squeeze.
Yeah, but finally that even if you film with Sony cameras, you're literally squeezing your brain. What can I say?
Well, you have the D-squeeze, you don't have the open gate.
Yeah. So, and then 20% actually film with anamorphic lenses, but still they prefer spherical lenses as their go-to, and only 9% usually have no interest to even try and shoot with anamorphic lenses. What I take from that is that there is willingness and openness to explore anamorphic lenses for those who are using it in general, really loving it. And I fully understand that anamorphic lenses are not for every project, but it's good. It's also depending on the camera that you have. But at the time that you are looking to be a bit different in your visual storytelling, I think it's nice to be able to shoot with anamorphic lenses, especially that those are now not as expensive as it used to be. And I don't want to go into the whole story of 133, 15, 18, two squeeze, what is better, what is not, what is more, what we giving out like a distinguished look or not. But in general, there is an ability to literally use the entire sensor. Doesn't matter now. Of course, I'm talking about if the manufacturer is allowing you to use 3x2 open gate recording and not just put leg bars on top and at the bottom and create something which is nice.
Well, I think one of the limitations for a lot of people, if you work for clients, at least for me, has always been wanting to use them, but the requirement to deliver something in 16:9, especially for TV, and it's just there. There's a lot of people who are forcing you.
You know, if they don't want the black bars, just shoot Filmware.
No, but I mean, seriously, it's something that I love the look, but it's just sometimes it takes so much convincing, especially to broadcasters. And, like if you shoot documentaries, it would be such an obvious choice sometimes to do it, but they just don't want the black bars. And that means you would have to massively crop, basically, just to have at least the look of the lens and the flares and all that comes with anamorphic minus the wider aspect ratios. So I think that is one of the reasons why it's difficult. I mean, it's almost like there's a market for, internal recording, cropping. So it ends up, it almost like de-squeezing and then immediately cropping to 16:9. I don't know, something like that, because it's something you don't want to deal with even in post, even if we talk about if you would frame for 16:9.
That's a different thing. That's one of the advantages of using open gate. That you shoot the 3x2 and then you're completely free to reframe later according to your needs. If it's 99.
But you need to frame for it while you're shooting, which means you need to use frame guides.
Yes,
stuff like that.
Many of the modern cameras literally allows you to do this, but you need an open gate for that. But here, in this specific part, we talked about anamorphic.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, I think because... I guess, it's my guess, maybe that's a follow-up question we can ask at some point. Is that one of the reasons why you don't want to or cannot? Because it's simply something that you...
Yes, sometimes it's
free to do.
A bit more of a hassle, depending if it's not an autofocus lens. That means you really have to be in focus. There is no in-between here.
No, I'm really talking about the resulting aspect ratio being something that the client doesn't want, simply as that,
I think if you're an independent filmmaker, maybe it's easier to suggest. If you're working for a broadcaster, as you said, maybe they will not be so.
What is an independent filmmaker? He still has a client.
But true. But it's easier to convince a client than a broadcaster. The broadcasters are usually working a bit more board.
Yeah, but even if they do a commercial and it ends up on TV, they probably are like, you have the stubborn marketing person in the company who's like, why am I showing black? I'm not paying for black bars on my TV commercial.
We know that in the past, those guys really liked even the flat picture profile and authorized that. So I will not.
You mean without grading? Yeah. Anyway, it'll be interesting to know from you guys. Good. Okay, let's move on to DJI, who just released, a week ago, the DJI Mic 3. Two, I would say, mixed reactions, right?
Absolutely.
Why is that?
First of all, the DJI Mic 2 really works well, and I use it a lot in the different environments and so on. So I was excited to hear that there's the DJI Mic 3 is being released. It is smaller, and it seems to be with so many little enhancements from different voice algorithm. I mean, you can change a little bit so your voice sounds a bit better. Also noise reduction. I think there are 2 levels of this and so on. But the main thing for me was really the size of it, because I like it to be smaller and of course, maybe not 100% hidden. I also like the thing is that in the charging box, you can now use it with the magnets and the widget, because before, what do you do with those? You really tend to lose them. But on the other hand, and that's why the mixed reactions are coming, there is no more 3.5 millimeter socket to connect a lav mic. There is no input. So when you look at this, and we are always torn between products that are being designed by engineers or users helping engineers. Here, at least when you look at the first glance, it looks as if engineers are the one to come up with the idea, maybe to save space, maybe whatever the reason is, but you cannot consider this to be 100% a pro product without the ability to connect your own favorite lav mic and have like a better sound. Even if the DJI Mic 3, at least according to the company and some testers, even if the sound is better, maybe that's not the sound that you want.
Well, yeah, I also don't understand. I mean,
either there will be a pro version of this one, or why? I mean, this is something that we were not able to understand from DJI. Simple answer. Why there is no 3.5 lavalier mic input?
Well, they had the DJI Mic Me 2, right? Which is basically that. Exactly. It's the same thing. And it doesn't have the lav input, like it doesn't have the 3.5 millimeter jack. And now they are releasing a new version of the DJI Mic 3, which is supposedly their pro version. It also doesn't have it, so it doesn't really make sense.
And it should be a professional tool, because it does have timecode, for example.
Yeah, this has everything.
Exactly. There's so many professional.
And it's even 32-bit float, internal recording, dual file. And then what you mentioned, the 2-level active noise cancellation, so you can set it to basic and strong. So you have 2 different levels of the noise reduction already recorded and stuff like that. 32-bit float is amazing, of course.
Even the 4 transmitters and up to 8 receivers. Yeah,
no.
Those are all pro features.
So the 8 receivers, actually, I think that is a big question why you need that. I mean, what DJI says is that you can pair 1 receiver with up to 4 transmitters simultaneously, and then 1 master receiver can connect with 7 sub-receivers designed for multi-camera live streaming, multi-person broadcast, and other multi-camera, multi-person productions. Multi-receiver enables direct audio recording to each camera unit. Meanwhile, group monitoring and control significantly improves filming efficiency. Now, of course, you don't need all the cameras to have the actual recording from all the mics. I mean, because in the edit, you just use the one. But I guess the idea here is just to have first of all, you give every operator monitoring capability. I mean, if they just plug in headphones into their...
You record internally also, so you have a backup, like a hard...
Yes, but I mean, it's just, if you imagine you do like a multicam on a sports event or theater where the operators are really far apart, if you need them to listen to the audio on stage and maybe react, of course, it makes sense for them to be able to hear what the receivers are receiving. So the idea is nice. It's not really essential for the final product per se, but it is nice to have these additional receivers, I think. But yeah, I mean, I think all of this is put in, it's very relative, because if you lose the lav mic ability, it's like, I mean, they're promoting colorful windshields, which, I don't know what the point is, because if the thing itself is black and has a huge DJI logo on top of it, you can't really hide it anyway. So, I mean, honestly, this thing immediately makes competing products like the HoloLens Lark Max 2 much more appealing, because the HoloLens solution, which we're also about to review, we haven't reviewed it yet, but we have it here already. It doesn't have, unfortunately, a 3.5 millimeter jack, but it has USB-C, and you can have a USB-C adapter to a 3.5. And then you can use it with an external lav, so it's fine. And also, you can mount, even if you don't use a lav, you can mount it the other way around and you don't see the logo. So it looks like almost like a clip. You can't really do that with the DJI because it's a little bit bigger and it's a bit harder to hide, in my opinion, because of that. So I don't know. It's weird.
Like I see, we're a bit IGC. I guess we see the guys from DJI, and I'm just curious. I'm curiosity to know why.
Yeah, but we see, I mean, on all the commentary on social media and everywhere, it's like people are very confused also on the side why this is the upgrade. Yeah, so good. Moving on to some other small thing introduced by NANLITE, Miro 30C and 60C.
It's really amazing how, again, NANLITE seems to be so busy. Almost every 2 weeks there's a new product. All of them are kind of smaller than what we used to,
and what we're using in here.
Exactly, but maybe they really want to differentiate between the lines of NANLITE and NANLITE. But those are very usable. Those are round panel lights, and of course the 30C is a bit weaker than the 60C
and smaller.
And that means that with a 30C Miro 30C, you can power it with 1 NPF battery. While with the Miro 60C, it has a place for 2 NPF batteries. Yeah, I mean,
is it bicolor?
Yeah, it has all the. It's bicolor. It has a lot of the stuff. It's always being. It is the same engine.
No, it's RGB even.
Yeah, no, it's doing a lot.
Oh, no, I think it's bicolor. No, 36,000.
Oh, yeah. It has this. It has Bluetooth. It has thermal management. It has, it's compact. The CCT range from 2,700 to 7,500. Even you have a green magenta adjustment if you need for proper skin tones and so on. It's nice. It can be controlled by the NANLITE app and so on. The thing is, it's not something that we haven't seen before in general. One thing is for sure, it will come with the NANLITE quality, and that's it, for me a big thing, because we know the family, we've been in the factory, we know how they take care and manufacture their stuff, and that means that if you buy something that is from a reputable company, you simply have parents for the products.
It really go after the Amaran brand, like the content creator brand of Aperture.
I would say like probably they're going after the Amaran brand. I would say that they're going after the content creator.
Yes, but it's like the first of the big brands that did that was originally Amaran, and now we see a lot more products from.
It makes sense. I mean, it's a huge market, and even if you don't sometimes like the word content creators, those are here to stay. They're not going anywhere, and they always need something in order to lead themselves. And this is a nice solution. Obviously, it has a little like a foot which it can be either put on a table or like a little yoke, basically, or you can
mounted on a tripod.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good. Let's move on to
Phil. Just the prices. If you want the smaller version, is $120, and if you're looking for the bigger version, it's $160.
That's very cheap. Yeah. Good. Let's move on to film stock. That's not something we usually talk about. I'm just going to mention it briefly here. Is it because it's interesting that Kodak, which is, as we have heard, in trouble, and then they said they're not in trouble. I mean, reported about the fact that they in their annual results, I think they reported that they have a bit of a cash gap, and people were speculating if they would be out of business soon. And then they put out a statement and say, no, everything is fine. Like we're fine. We just meet, just waiting for a bit of money, basically. But still, we know that. I mean, the high days of film stock are over. I mean, there's hardly any feature films being shot on film anymore, and it has become really something for a very, very small group of people to still be able to do. And which is interesting. So it's very interesting, actually, that Kodak decided to enhance their Vision 3 film stock. And actually, I mean, I'm not very familiar with all those terms with, different emulsions and techniques used to process film. But what they basically did is simplify the process of development, which probably brings down the cost of producing it, but also the complexity of developing it.
And so you use it in a digital camera?
No, either. But basically, I mean, I have shot. I mean, we've actually back here. There's a Vision 2. If you watch the video version, there's 2 rows of 60mm Vision 2 film stock from 20 years ago. For my film studies. But anyway, so Vision 3 is their latest generation of film, and I think it was almost introduced, must be also almost 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And now they are kind of changing that final layer. It used to be called remjet, which is a separate process you have to run through when developing it. And they're replacing it with something called AHU, anti-halation undercoat. What it means, it's a simpler process of developing it. So there's one less path that it has to go into for the chemicals when developing it. And it also supposedly creates a cleaner image. It's a cleaner image with better protection against dust and halation. And labs can save water and energy, and it's just a faster process. So it's not going to, change a huge thing. I'm assuming it's something that also saves some cost. And if at the same time it makes the process more straightforward and the image is better, of course they're going to do it. So it's nice to see that they're still enhancing this, which I wasn't aware of. Apparently worked on this for the last 8 years. Good. Let's move on to the final piece of news. Viltrox joining the L-mount alliance.
But we know Viltrox is a reputable Chinese lens manufacturer, and I'm quite happy to see that they're joining the L-mount. The last before them was Zirui. So obviously the owners of the L-mount, which is Leica, and they're the one to actually give the stamp of approval before a company joins. It means something. It means that Leica is very confident about the quality that the company is producing, and it's nice to see that this alliance is actually growing up. What it means, besides the prestigious part of it, let's see. Hopefully, it's going to bring even more lenses. But at the end of the day, when we think about companies that are using the L-mount, you have Panasonic, you have Blackmagic Design up to some extent. I mean, one of the companies that are in the alliance here is also Samyang. I'm talking about a camera manufacturer is DJI. We haven't seen any camera with L-mount from DJI, but on the drone for now. Maybe that's another sign of hopefully they will bring something which is a proper.
Well, they just have adapters for the drone. I mean, it's the native one is still with DL, but yeah.
So this alliance is obviously growing up, and I really wonder how much L-mount cameras are out there if you compare to the Sony mount or the Canon RF mount or the Fujifilm X and GFX mount. Maybe this is something that we should even ask in a poll. But so the alliance is growing, and of course, Leica themselves have cameras with L mount. That's the mount. They are the creators of the mount. So on one hand, the alliance is growing, but I really hope to see even more L mount cameras.
Yeah. And finally, let's talk about our educational piece of the week, which is by our dear friend Masha. And she wrote about good and bad exposition in films and how to deal with it. And that is a really, really good article with a lot of examples from famous films. And basically, it talks about the fact that exposition, which is the process of actually exposing the topic to the audience and what the story is about. And that can be quite clunky at times, like there's a lot of different ways of doing that. And she shows a few examples which are really, really bad, and some are really good, actually. And a bad example here is Star Wars, I think, which, the famous rolling kind of credits at the beginning of the movie, which kind of explain everything that's happening. Because it can be, it's such a classic now, so I'm probably, it's sacrilegious to say that, but it's a bit of a lazy way of doing exposition for a movie, explaining what's happening before the movie actually starts like that. It's almost like it's worse than a voiceover, to be honest. And yeah, she's also talking about voiceover, but she's also giving some really good examples of how it's done, like from American Beauty over to Maleficent, and with a couple other examples from different other movies. And also, some clunky dialogue also from Star Wars Episode 2. So it's really, really interesting insights. I think if you're into making short films or feature films yourself or writing, it's such a good read just to understand the challenges that even much more accomplished filmmakers than all of us actually have faced in the past with their movies. As a great example here, we have Rear Window from Alfred Hitchcock, which is doing such a good job at, exposition with the opening sequence of that movie. I'm not going to give away all of it. Just give it a read. Link is in the show notes. All right. And with that, we're going to close and invite you to tune into next week's episode. As we said in the beginning, it's going to be very exciting because it's just ahead of IBC with a lot of announcements probably already there. And we'll talk about them next week. Thank you, Johnny. And don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform. You can get us wherever you can get podcasts, and write us a message at podcast@cined.com if you have any questions or comments. And also share this episode with whoever you think is worth sharing it. Till next week.
Bye.
Bye.